But this is where you come in later. Correct me if I'm wrong. Later dater today,
Mhm.
podcast, and I think what you're doing introduces, well, educates people on different ways of connecting. And
Yes.
don't you have events too?
No, I used to do
Used
events.
to.
Yeah, I used to do events. I'm
So for
thinking about
our,
bringing
I'm
them
sorry,
back. I'm thinking
for
about bringing them back, but that's to be TBD.
for our listeners who are, dating, what are some suggestions you give them? Obviously, besides using the online dating.
Well, I
First,
mean,
sign
one
up
of
for your podcast.
what?
First, sign up for the Later Date or Today podcast and follow
Yeah,
that.
just like yeah, listen to it and also like listen to it in order. So it's sort of sequenced very carefully. So we kind of start
Okay.
with like fundamental principles, and then go to, a lot of listener questions or really, really like thinking about, rewiring yourself, I would say is the most important thing you can do right now. I think a lot of people just sort of ingested the dating apps. And again, I'm not against the dating apps. People think that I'm against them. I'm not against them. I just think they can overtake you.
You got to
Um,
supplement them, right?
yeah, and also I think use them with care and with thought. And I think that's sort of what I'm trying to do in the podcast. Before you even open the thing, before you do anything, there are certain like just certain things you have to emotionally and psychologically have in place to take to like, to take advantage of it without being, sort of overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. So, tell us about your crossover work in the dating industry and why WeWork hired you to focus on relationships in the professional lives.
Yeah, so I mean, I was working in dating, and I think the thing that I was noticing is, people sort of had who they were on their profile and then who they were in person, and sometimes there's, a bit of a dissonance. You kind of have to make, cross that bridge, and so in many ways, the same thing was happening in dating. I mean, the same thing was happening at work, right? There's who somebody is online, there's who somebody is on Zoom, and then there's who somebody is in, in a physical sense. And so we were all getting more and more splintered. And so for them, it was very easy to see that what I was doing in the dating world had actually a lot of application in the workplace. And
So how so? So now, getting into, really my, bandwidth of, making sure first leaders build strong relationships with their employees, right? From a professional standpoint. Employees work together well and collaborate, and then ultimately, that we have strong people skills to build rapport with our customers, show empathy, show compassion. I'm assuming it's all the same. Am I correct?
yeah, it is very much the same. I think that, but I think the thing that's a little bit harder in dating is there is a very, very heavy uh, sort of veil of judgment because you kind of have to make a decision about someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that in some ways that is what makes it a little bit harder because people, when you come to work, of course you're making judgments about people, but you also know you're probably going to have to work with them on a project. You're probably going to
Yeah.
see them in a meeting. You are going to fill out someone's performance review. So you kind of have to press pause on a lot of your assumptions and
Yeah,
judgments.
dating, I guess I don't have to tolerate the person because I can move on
Right.
versus,
Well,
yeah,
and you're there with a different objective, right? So while it makes sense, it's just like again, I'm just drawing people's attention to the fact that you're the goal of it is to have an assessment of somebody, within like 1 to 3 interactions.
yeah,
And we don't make that same demand in other places of our lives, right? We usually have a more extended timeline.
yeah.
So um, so there are similarities, but there are also places where it kind of diverges.
Does this come up? So I teach people about building an instant rapport with others, and this could be, you know,
Mhm.
out at a bar at a country club. And again, it's not about mine isn't about dating, but it's just about how to build an instant rapport because it's a lost art at any generation. And I say the first obstacle if me and you were at a conference or, ate lunch in the cafeteria of work,
Mhm.
and we spoke for 15 minutes. That doesn't mean I built a rapport with you, because I could have talked to you about myself for the entire 15 minutes, right? And I say
Mhm.
this, we're all genetically pre-coded to be consumed with what's going on in our life. And that's a
Mhm.
harder urge to resist, is to throw up on you about, oh my God, my flight was delayed last night. My son got in trouble at school, and this client is driving me crazy.
Uh-huh.
So we teach that about, rapport building, of focusing on the other person. What can you learn from the other person? And my technique is, you got to learn two or more things of their Ford, Ford, right?
Mhm.
Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And if you can
Okay.
kind of organically bring that up, now I'm talking less about me. You're usually, those are people's hot buttons, one or all of those things.
Mhm.
What do you think? Am I on the right track? And does that go back and forth to both dating and just inherent people skills?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that all like adds up, and I think like I think the thing in a dating context is there is an exchange of information, but I think what people are really trying to understand is the other person's values because it's dating, right? And you're trying
Yeah.
to see if that matches up.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to start and then you're kind of trying to see if you're going to match in that regard. And so that's where something that wouldn't bother you in a friendship or building business context can bother you very much when you're in a dating context because you
Right.
see it as a value, not an idiosyncrasy, not like a something else. So
Yeah.
that's where it's a little bit different.
Well, all right. Tell me if I give, so I give,
Does
I've
that make
given
does
the,
that, does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.